In front of her friends, she bragged, if he left me, I'd have 10 guys waiting. They laughed. I just said, let's test that theory. I left that night. A year later, she was still waiting and watching me build a life without her. The conversation, if you can even call it that, happened at a dinner party at our apartment. It was one of those nights where my girlfriend, Ashley, insisted on showing off. New dress, new wine glasses, a new set of friends she'd acquired from her trendy yoga studio. I never liked her yoga friends. They were a flock of carbon copy women who all spoke in the same Brady, vocal fry accent and seemed to communicate entirely through backhanded compliments and passive-aggressive jabs. I was in the kitchen, pulling the roast out of the oven, when I heard Ashley's voice rise above the chatter in the living room. She was holding court, as she often did, telling some exaggerated story about a vacation we'd taken. I could hear the fake, tinkling laughter of her friends. I tuned it out, focusing on getting the dinner plates ready. Then, I heard my name. One of the friends, a particularly catty woman named Madison, asked a question loud enough for the whole room to hear. But what would you do if a guy like Chris Hemsworth tried to hit on you, Ashley? Would you really turn him down for Dave? It was a stupid, childish question, but it was also a test. A loyalty test, right there in front of a dozen people. I paused in the kitchen, listening. Ashley's laugh was loud and dismissive. Oh my God, Maddie, are you kidding? If Chris Hemsworth even looked in my direction, I'd be gone. Dave knows the deal. Then came the line that changed everything. She wasn't just laughing now, she was bragging, her voice full of a smug, arrogant confidence that made my stomach turn. Seriously, though, she said, her voice dropping into a conspiratorial tone. If he ever left me, I wouldn't even be sad. I'd have 10 guys waiting in line by the end of the day. 10 at least. Her friends erupted in a chorus of supportive, cackling laughter. They thought it was hilarious. Empowering, even. I stood in the kitchen, holding a hot roasting pan, and felt a profound, chilling sense of clarity. For 5 years, I had been building a life with a woman who saw me not as a partner, but as a placeholder. A comfortable, reliable option she'd keep around until something better came along. The 10 guys weren't a hypothetical. They were her backup plan, her safety net, the audience she was constantly performing for. I didn't storm out of the kitchen. I didn't yell. I took a deep breath, composed myself, and walked into the living room, a polite, plastic smile on my face. I placed the roast on the dining table. Ashley looked at me, her eyes shining with the thrill of her own performance. There he is, she announced, as if presenting a well-behaved pet. I looked at her, then at her friends, their faces still flushed with laughter at my expense. That's an interesting theory, I said, my voice calm and even. Ashley's smile faltered slightly. What theory? The one about the 10 guys, I said, looking directly into her eyes. Let's test it. The room went silent. The laughter died in their throats. Ashley just stared at me, her mouth slightly agape, the confident bravado draining from her face. What are you talking about, Dave? She finally stammered. I picked up my jacket from the back of her chair. I took keys and my wallet from the small bowl by the door. I'm talking about me leaving, I said, my voice as flat and hard as a granite countertop. So you can start making your calls. Your 10 guys are now officially on the clock. I walked out the door and didn't look back. I left them there, in my apartment, with my food, in the middle of a dinner party that had just become awake. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I was never coming back. Update 1. The first night of my new life was spent in a sterile, anonymous hotel room downtown. I didn't sleep. I just sat in the dark, the silence of the room a stark contrast to the chaos I had just unleashed. My phone started blowing up almost immediately. First, it was Ashley, a frantic barrage of texts and calls. What was that? Are you serious? Dave, come back right now. This isn't funny. You're really going to end our 5-year relationship over a stupid joke? I didn't answer. Then came the calls from her friends, the same women who had been laughing at me an hour earlier, now leaving concerned, confused voicemails. I ignored those too. I'm a software engineer. My brain is wired for logic, for systems, for finding the most efficient solution to a problem. And my problem was that I had spent 5 years of my life building a shared infrastructure with a person who had just proven to be a catastrophic security risk. It was time to decommission the server. The next morning, I began the process of systematically disentangling my life from hers. I was methodical. I was ruthless. I was a machine executing a script. First, the finances. We had a joint checking account and a joint savings account. I was the primary earner by a significant margin. I went to my bank and opened a new set of accounts in my name only. I calculated my total post-tax contributions to our joint accounts over the past 5 years and transferred that exact amount to my new accounts. I left her contributions and a generous portion of the shared growth in the old accounts. I wasn't trying to leave her destitute. I was just taking back what was mine. Next, the apartment. We lived in a condo that I owned, a place I had bought and paid for long before I met her. She was not on the deed or the mortgage. She was, in the eyes of the law, a tenant with no lease. I had my lawyer draft a formal eviction notice. I hired a process server to deliver it to her at the apartment the next day. Then, I went on the offensive. Ashley was a social media influencer, a job that consisted of her posting heavily filtered photos of our life and promoting dubious wellness products. Her entire identity, her entire sense of self-worth, was tied to the public performance of our relationship. I had always been a reluctant participant in her online theater, the boring, stable boyfriend in the background of her glamorous shots. It was time for my character to be written out of the show. I went through every one of my own social media accounts and scrubbed them clean of her. Every photo, every tag, every mention. It was a digital erasure. Then I posted a single, simple statement on my own page, a page that was followed by most of our mutual friends. For those who have been asking, Ashley and I are no longer together. The decision was mine, and it is final. I wish her the best in all her future endeavors. I didn't give a reason. I didn't engage in the drama. I just stated the fact, coolly and professionally, like a corporate press release announcing a change in leadership. The effect was immediate. The narrative she had been trying to spin, that I was a jealous, overreacting boyfriend who had thrown a tantrum over a joke, was immediately undercut by my calm, definitive statement. The real blow, however, was yet to come. Ashley had always been obsessed with her car, a luxury convertible she couldn't possibly afford on her own. The car was leased, and while she made the monthly payments from our joint account, the lease itself was co-signed by me. My credit, my income, was the only reason she had been approved for it. I called the leasing company. I explained that I was no longer in a relationship with the primary driver and that I was formally requesting to have my name removed as the co-signer. The representative told me that was not possible without a full credit reevaluation of the primary leaseholder. He told me that, given Ashley's stated income, it was highly unlikely she would be approved on her own. I told him I understood and that I would no longer be guaranteeing the payments. I knew this would trigger a clause in the lease agreement. The company would have no choice but to repossess the vehicle. It was only a matter of time. Update 2. The eviction notice was served on a Monday. According to the process server, Ashley was at the apartment with Madison, her head bridesmaid in the army of Yoga Babble harpies. They refused to accept the papers, so the server left them taped to the door. Ashley's reaction was predictable. She and her friends launched a full-scale smear campaign. I was painted as a fragile, insecure man with a bruised ego. The story of the dinner party was twisted into a narrative where I was the villain, a man who couldn't take a joke and who had cruelly thrown his loving, devoted girlfriend out on the street. But their campaign had a fatal flaw: me. I refused to play the game. I didn't respond to their posts. I didn't defend myself to mutual friends. I just maintained a dignified, professional silence. My one public statement stood on its own, a rock of calm in their sea of manufactured drama. And the more they raged, the more unhinged they looked. The real consequences began to land about a week later. The first was the car. A tow truck showed up at our apartment building one afternoon and repossessed the convertible. There was a scene, of course. Ashley and Madison apparently screamed at the driver, filmed him on their phones, and threatened to sue. The driver, a man who had undoubtedly seen it all before, just calmly hooked up the car and drove away. Ashley was now without her primary status symbol. She was also without a way to get to her endless stream of brunches, yoga classes, and influencer events. The next blow was financial. The money in the joint accounts which she had been using to fund her lifestyle began to run out. The rent on the apartment, which I had stopped paying, was coming due. The credit cards, which were in my name, were canceled. The comfortable, easy life she had always taken for granted was beginning to crumble. She tried to fight the eviction, of course. She got a lawyer, probably paid for by her parents, who argued that she was an established resident and that I had no right to kick her out. My lawyer simply presented the deed to the apartment in my name only and a detailed financial accounting of our shared expenses, which showed that I had paid for over 90% of our life together. The judge gave her 30 days to vacate. It was during this time that her 10 guys theory was truly put to the test. She was single now, a free agent, but the line of suitors she had been so confident in never materialized. The story of our breakup and the reason for it was well known in our social circle. Men, it turned out, were not lining up to date a woman who had a reputation for being disloyal, arrogant, and financially unstable. Her phone, for the first time in her adult life, was silent. While her world was imploding, I was quietly, methodically building a new one. I took a leave of absence from my job. I sold the apartment, a place that was now tainted with the memory of her betrayal. I bought a small, modern house on the other side of the city, a place she had never seen, a place that was entirely mine. I reconnected with old friends I had neglected during my relationship with her. I started working on a personal project, a piece of software I had been dreaming of building for years. I didn't date, I didn't go out, I just worked. I worked on my house, I worked on my project, I worked on myself. I was building a life of substance, a life that wasn't for public consumption, a life that was real. Final update, it's been a year since that dinner party, a year of quiet, focused, and incredibly productive work. The software I was building, a logistics and project management tool for small businesses, took off. I sold it to a larger tech company 6 months ago for a sum of money that has changed my life. I am now, by any measure, a very wealthy man. I still work, but now I work for myself on projects that I'm passionate about. Ashley's life in that same year has been a slow, painful decline. After she was evicted from the apartment, she had to move back in with her parents. Her influencer career, which was built on the fantasy of a glamorous life she was no longer living, withered and died. She had to get a real job as a receptionist at a dental office. Her friends, the ones who had been her loyal audience, slowly drifted away. They were drawn to the drama and the lifestyle she had provided. With those gone, she had nothing to offer them. Madison, her best friend, is apparently now engaged to a wealthy older man and has completely cut Ashley out of her life. I hadn't seen her or spoken to her in a year. I had blocked her on everything, and she had no way of knowing about my recent success. Until last week, a local business journal published a feature article about me. It was a profile of a successful local entrepreneur, complete with a picture of me standing in front of my new house. The article mentioned the sale of my company and my new net worth. 2 days after that article was published, I got an email. It was from her. "Dave," it began. "I saw the article. Congratulations. I'm so proud of you." The email was long and rambling, a masterpiece of revisionist history. She talked about how she had always believed in me, how she had known I was destined for great things. She said our breakup was the biggest mistake of her life, a moment of insecurity and foolishness that she has regretted every day for the past year. She said she had grown, she had changed, and that she was finally the woman I had always deserved. She ended the email with a simple, hopeful question. "Can we please just talk? I miss my best friend." I read the email twice. I didn't feel anger, I didn't feel pity, I just felt nothing. The woman who had written that email was a stranger to me, a ghost from a life I no longer lived. I thought about her boast at that dinner party, a year ago. The 10 guys waiting in line. The arrogant, absolute certainty that she was the prize, that she held all the cards. I thought about the year she had just spent, a year of watching her own life crumble while I was quietly, painstakingly building an empire. I typed a single, simple reply. "The theory has been tested. The results are in. Please do not contact me again." I hit send and then blocked her email address. My revenge was never about a single, dramatic moment. It was about the slow, silent, and undeniable proof that she was wrong. She thought I was a placeholder in her life, but it turns out she was just a footnote in mine. And the best part is, she now has a lifetime to sit and wait and watch me build a